Today we're featuring an IWGP Women's title match between Mayu Iwatani and Syuri, the best match from the January 4th, 2024 Tokyo Dome shows, though unfortunately it was only held at their small City Hall facility. Bushiroad wasn't able to come up with anything compelling for this year's Wrestle Kingdom to follow last year's great Kenny Omega vs. Will Ospreay match, though with a lineup that failed almost universally to pair talented workers, it felt like the card greatly overachieved by actually managing to deliver two good matches, Shingo Takagi vs. Tama Tonga and Hiromu Takahashi vs. El Desperado. Bushiroad did get things right with their Stardom main event, especially when you consider it was a one-match show that actually didn't make the same mistake as the first two Iwatani vs. Syuri title matches, forcing them to go 10 minutes longer than they needed to just for the sake of calling it a quote-unquote epic. The major problem with the BS Road Epic is you are sliding wrestlers of varying strengths and weaknesses into a format that requires very particular strengths in order to actually justify the excessive length. Unfortunately, as good as Mayu and Syuri are, carrying matches, laying out matches, and telling stories aren't among their strengths, so the wannabe epic doesn't suit them at all. Their October 3rd, 2020 World of Stardom title encounter felt like a dream match going in. Two of the very best workers of the 2010s that had only faced off in tag on a couple of random produce shows during that decade finally being in the same league after Syuri had worked almost everywhere, from Yoshihiro Tajiri's largely men's league Smash in WNC, to CMLL, to Pancrase in UFC. Unfortunately, it wound up being a bloated, procrastinating exhibition. It was definitely the most Syuri-style match of their four, especially early on, with more focus on kicks and submissions, justifying Syuri's domination, although it grew into a more conventional spot-oriented match as it progressed, and ultimately, Mayu was able to overcome with her Dragon Suplex at 28:58. Their March 27, 2022 World of Stardom title match was arguably hampered by Syuri having a 27-minute title defense against Julia the day before. This was nonetheless a better effort with more things to like about the bout overall, though it once again largely exemplified the weaknesses of the two, that neither are great at carrying or laying out matches, and they don't utilize their impressive offense in a manner that actually results in much drama. The Mayu knee injury storyline was at least a reasonable justification for the downtime, and it was paid off with an actual knee submission in the White Tiger. As someone who is annoyed by refs constantly being made to look like powerless fools who allow fighters to be down and or out for a minute at a time to keep the lazy CM Punks of the world from having to do more than 20 things in half an hour, this particular finish that probably sounded good on paper still didn't really come off because Iwatani was in possession of her faculties and was simply choosing not to quit. It could have worked if they had played things better to get over the fact that the ref was saving Mayu from herself, or had Mayu made the ropes only to have the ref stop it because her knee gave out trying to stand back up. But again, storytelling is not their forte. Their first two matches were very disappointing because the excessive length required them to slow down considerably, leading to more meandering while downplaying their biggest strengths of athleticism, work rate, and intense hard-hitting action. Even though they weren't going all out in their September 3rd, 2023 5-star Grand Prix 2023 B-Block match, it was probably the most successful of their matches to date simply because they just did what they are good at for 12.5 minutes without trying to manufacture a lot of false drama. Their weaknesses were largely hidden because there wasn't enough time for them to be exposed. Overall, these two matches were all good, just not the sort of high-end match you hope for when top workers finally meet. Their 2024 match really built upon the 2023 match, and was a major step up that finally displayed the great potential of the matchup. Both brought their A-game and pulled no punches, going all out for a 19-minute big match that truly felt worthy of the main event and the title. They just kept going until they couldn't go anymore, throwing bombs and building the match so to speak through escalating craziness. Sure, it's just a spectacular work rate match that was all about speed and impact, but doing limited things you do exceptionally well works better than trying to do a bunch of things you aren't very good at in a passable fashion just because convention dictates that you are supposed to. They did way more today in 19 minutes than they did in nearly 30 minutes in their previous title matches. Basically, all they removed was 10 minutes of dead time, and in doing so, they were able to deliver a match with much more urgency, now trying to fit everything in rather than trying to drag everything out. Mayu was in great form, and it felt like what you were expecting to see from her first World of Stardom title reign before injuries to her and Io Shirai, combined with the departures of Kairi Hojo and Shirai, sent the league on a very different trajectory. Everything Syuri did just felt brutal. She tried her best to decapitate Iwatani with kicks, knees, even a guillotine single leg off the top to a standing Mayu. The most dangerous of these spots was probably throwing Mayu headfirst into the turnbuckle pad. This match wasn't particularly submission-oriented, but Syuri did an avalanche hoverboard lock Kushida would have been proud of. Iwatani was mostly trying to win with her dragon suplex, but was unable to capitalize when she hit it on the apron because it came soon after taking a tornado DDT off the apron. Later, Mayu released her dragon suplex in order to then pin Syuri after the two-step dragon suplex. But in suplexing Syuri twice in a row, she wound up too close to the ropes. Mayu somehow came up from this with blood dripping down her chin onto her neck. Mayu was able to hang with Syuri stiffness-wise, and the striking sequences were so much better here because the match as a whole was so much faster and more aggressive. They just kept spamming big moves at a crazy pace until Mayu ducked a running elbow and hit a released dragon suplex into an avalanche-style reverse Frankensteiner for the win. There weren't really any ideas here, and it was largely just a much better Battle of the Titans version of the usual 50-50 stuff you see from Stardom to avoid any legitimate thought or struggle needing to be put into gaining or maintaining control. But from an athletic perspective, there just aren't many women around who are capable of delivering better non-stop action. It was top-shelf video game fun, with a level of stiffness and intensity that allowed it to come off as more than pure spectacle. I give this match 4 out of 5 stars.